Good afternoon from the UK. Good morning from Hudson Valley, New York State. I'm delighted to be joining me today is Alexandra M Davila from New York, New Yorkish, hour north, I'm told. So here to talk about you and your writing. So we start at the beginning, as we always do, with how you got into writing, and if you can remember the first thing you wrote.
First of all, thank you for having me.
Very
Um,
welcome.
I used to write all the time when I was a little kid in marble notebooks and that sort of thing. I used to write in school after I would finish my work really fast, so I had time to make these stories that were all about probably animals and things like that when you're that little.
Mm.
But I distinctly remember when I was in third grade, my teacher had us do a lot of creative writing. And we had just raised caterpillars into butterflies, and the assignment was to write a story about all that. And I wrote a story called Charlie the Butterfly or Charlie the Caterpillar. And I remember how proud my teacher was and how excited she was. And she kept telling me that I should keep writing. And I said, okay, well, if my teacher says it, I guess I should.
Yeah.
And I did keep writing for a long time until I graduated high school. And then I don't know, I guess life became more exciting and,
Yeah,
and I was doing other
it
things at
does take
university.
over.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I just recently came back to it.
Okay. So what can you remember what brought you back? Just that you missed it and maybe life was a little less frantic. Because you have children and family and a lap dog, I read in you. I'm intrigued by your dog. Because mine's always as soon as I move his bed out from my office, he goes, okay. And he sits by the sits in his he's got one of those donut beds.
Mhm.
So he's the other side of the door.
Mine, if he could have followed me upstairs, he would have. Any flick of my wrist, he's at the ready. But I had him stay downstairs. Life is actually probably more hectic now because I have kids and a dog
Yeah.
and a husband, and I'm a teacher in my regular life.
Mm.
But I don't know. I had this image of one of the characters in my head for a long time, and I knew it would be some sort of apocalyptic, maybe dystopian story. I just Nothing really fleshed itself out. And then one day I was on 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was on my way to work, and it was pouring rain so badly, and I was carpooling with my coworker. She was driving at the time. She said, we're getting off the highway. We'll go local, but we were stuck even on the local roads
Mm.
outside this church for a really long time. And I promise there's a reason for this story. So we're
Yeah, that's
sitting
okay.
out this
No, it's
church.
always interesting to
Yeah.
veer off.
Um, we were stuck outside this church for the longest time because traffic just wasn't moving anywhere. We should have really turned around and just gone home at that point. But anyway, while I was sitting there, I'm looking at the church, and it's all decked out for Christmas. It has, the giant nativity outside, and it has those kind of like teepee shaped billboards trying to get people to come in for a show or whatever for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I just had this image of that one character in my head and two other characters who I had never thought of before converging at a church in the rain close to Christmas. And then anybody who has read the book or has at least read the back of the book knows that the book
Mm.
starts around rain at Christmas time. And that's just how it all
That's right.
started. But I didn't have any time to write because I'm a teacher and I have little kids. And one
Yeah.
day over the winter break from school, I had told my husband about all this, and he just walked up to me one day while the kids were napping. I was sitting on the couch in between them, and he gave me, I think, a piece of paper or a notebook and said, "Here, just start writing."
Mm.
And I didn't want to. I was like, "No, I can't. I'm just self-conscious." And he said, "Just do it."
Mm.
And I did.
Mm.
And I've been going.
See, yeah. See, there's a big difference between writing. You could have just written for pleasure, but the
Mhm.
fact that you have a supportive husband, mine's brilliant. He's an avid reader. Unfortunately, I don't write science fiction, and that's what he reads. But he has read one of mine. But he would love nothing more than for me to write as much as I can. And I think it makes a huge difference. And teachers, especially. I had a wonderful English teacher, and when I was at school, we did all the dark stuff, which I think is why I've gone fairly dark. We had
Mm-hmm.
Moonfleet and Jane Eyre and Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a really wonderful syllabus in English. So I think yes, I think the teacher obviously sowed the seed for you and made you think, remember that you it was something you wanted to do and enjoyed doing and were clearly good at. So what made you choose apocalyptic? I always struggle to say the word apocalyptic. I always think it starts ac, and it never does, of course. So what made you choose apocalyptic? Just that
Um,
scene or something? What do you read? Is that the kind of thing you read?
I do read the that genre. I actually mostly read historical fiction. I'm a social studies teacher. I love history
Mm.
and I've always loved the mixing of history and literature. But I always said that apocalyptic fiction was my guilty pleasure because they usually are really fast. Some of them are super cheesy. No offense to anybody. We all know everybody who loves the genre knows that there's kind of like a these tropes that everybody uses and they're fun, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know, I just always found it interesting to see how different people would survive in different scenarios. And so I just read a lot of them. And I never in a million years thought that I would write something in that genre because I'm not a survivalist. My husband is a Marine. And I always say, if
Right.
there was an end of the world scenario, I'm thankful I have him because I would be
Right.
useless. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know, it just sort of happened when I had these characters in my head and this torrential rain. I was like, well, what kind of scenario would that be? And
Yeah.
it just happened on its own,
Yeah. Well,
I
it
think.
lends
But
itself perfectly, doesn't it?
yeah,
That
kind of.
situation.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fun to write, but I don't try to pretend that I put so much survivalist information in there because it wouldn't
Mm.
be authentic. It would be too hard for me to write. I could do research on it, of course, but it's really more about characters for me
Yeah.
rather than the apocalypse. The apocalypse is just sort of in the background.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I teach creative writing, and quite often the topic will come up of character versus plot versus location. And so I ask, and in person, I tend to, when I'm teaching for the local councils, I tend to have sort of 16, 17 students. And there might be one who'll put up, so I go, which do you think is the most important in a story? So I go character, and everybody puts their hand up. Setting, one or two might put their hand up, or plot. And then again, one or two might put their hand up. And I say, well, out of the three, which is the most important? Is character, as most of you put there. Does anybody think that setting or plot is the most important? And maybe one or two people will go, well, plot, because if you don't have a plot, then nothing really happens.
Mhm.
But proving the point, as you've just said, is that the character is the most important thing because you have to feel for your characters. And especially with your kind of writing, if you're throwing them into a particularly difficult situation, and perhaps something being apocalyptic, um, being something that isn't the norm, it's how, and readers, it's the how. I think the how is the most important thing. Is how are they going to get out of their situation that they're in.
Yeah.
So having found the time, or having been encouraged to find the time by your lovely spouse to write, do you write? Do you still try to write fairly regularly?
Um, I try. It's hard. As it was easier with it was easiest with the first book. So I have two published and I'm working on the third one in the series right now. The first one was the easiest to write because I could write on the weekends and both of my kids still took a nap. So that was my hour
Right.
that I could write. And when I have these breaks from school, again, I'm with my kids, but they have that window of time. So that was easy. The second book was a little bit more challenging, but I found the time. Right now with the third book, it's so much harder. I did have a great writing session yesterday. And I'm kind of just my husband is encouraging. He's like, listen, just go upstairs for half an hour or an hour, whatever we can allot, and just do it. But sometimes I'm not even in the right mind frame, right? Because life comes at you fast and there's a lot going on, or I just don't have an idea right now. Lately, my issue is that I have these pieces of ideas and I don't know how to link them. And I personally have a hard time writing in those pieces. I like to write straight through.
Linearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm trying because it's important to even do a paragraph here and there because it adds up quickly. So I'm trying. Wish me luck, guys.
Good luck. No, I find if I get, because I tend to work on two or three things at once, so that if I get to a point where I don't know what's going to happen next, I'll
Mhm.
just write more here in capitals, and then I'll go off to another project. And then when I come back, either I will on the same project I'll write something a bit later if I know what's happening a bit later, or I'll go to another project, and then when I get stuck on that, I'll come back to the first one, and then when I get to the end, I search for literally the phrase "more here,"
Yeah.
so that because then you've worked out how it ends, you can add the bits in. But I totally get that because I used to be a pantser, so you get an idea and fly by the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now I say I'm a plantser. So I do a bit of plotting. So rather than be a full out plotter, I do a bit of plotting because I still like the idea of the unknown. You don't quite know what's happening, and but your brain
Yeah.
produces it somehow. So do
I
you plan at all before you start writing?
The first book I didn't know what I was doing. I just had these characters come to my head and I just kind of wrote whatever felt right.
Hmm.
The second book I had maybe a general outline. I wrote it out on paper. I'm very tactile like that. I need to do it on paper.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening, I started writing that. And then about halfway through, I said, it's not working. It's not the way I wanted it to go. A chunk of it was, and I kept that, and the rest had to go.
Hmm.
This one, I have notes on my phone, so I have a very long commute, and that's where I get my best ideas because I'm alone. I don't have my kids around or anything, and an idea will pop into my head, and I have just this very nonsensical note on my phone where I keep track of all these scenes that pop into my head, and then I just filter through it periodically to see, oh yeah, I remember that now. That makes sense here, and I just kind of
Yeah.
plug and play or delete as needed. And that's kind of how I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. So do you think you might switch genre? Because is this going to be the third in a trilogy, or do you think it would go on more than that?
So there will be 3 books for the series. Well, not for the series, for the trilogy. And then I have this idea for a fourth book that's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to read it to know the end of the story, but
Mm.
it's going to be about all the side characters you meet along the way.
Nice.
Because I had somebody read the first book and I met her online and she messaged me on Facebook and said, I asked her who's your favorite and least favorite character because that's what I ask everyone.
Mm.
And she told me, and then she said, honestly, my least favorite character is who's not even a real character. He was there for like part of a chapter, and he did X, Y, and Z, and I want to know what his deal is. Like, what happened to him? He disappeared. Why did he even behave that way? And
Mm.
that made me think. I've read so many books where I also wonder what happened to those people we met along the way because some of them are really memorable. So I
Mm.
decided to write a fourth book for this world that's really just more, I guess, an anthology of short stories about all those side characters. So anybody who really wanted to know about all these different people, they're there for you. But
Yeah.
not necessarily part of the main 3 books.
Mm. So how did you? They are they self-published? I should have checked this beforehand. Self-published, or do you have a publisher?
They're self-published.
Hmm.
I wanted to go the traditional route. And I did reach out to quite a few. It was very time consuming though, and I don't have a lot of time. And I could do the waiting game, I guess, but I was really eager for people to read it. I was really confident in my first book because my characters meant so much to me. I said, I know somebody will like this. And this genre, I meant the first book is very much meant for teenagers, maybe a little older, but teenagers can read it, right? And but I know lots of adults who read teenage books, and this genre is great for a lot of ages. And I said, I know people who love this genre will love this. So I said, let me just self-publish. And I did, and it's been going really well. And I actually
Brilliant.
like having control of my own timeline, especially because I can't have pressure to write faster because I just can't do it right now. The marketing is hard, but it's okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you said that you ask your readers what are the favorite and least favorite characters. Do you have a Facebook group that you, or do you do this on Instagram, or where are you sort of predominantly?
I have an Instagram and I have a Facebook, a page. I don't have a Facebook group. I didn't even consider that really. I don't think enough people have read it for that. A lot of the people who have read it are my friends or family. I have sold quite a few online to people I don't know or at events. But I do have a mailing list. So people sign up for the mailing list when I meet them at events, and they've emailed me. I was shocked the first time I got an email from somebody I met at a Comic-Con or Barnes and Noble event, which is a local bookstore chain in the US. I was so excited. I said, I have fans. So people will email me their thoughts, or if they're people I know, they'll text me or whatever. And I just sort of keep a running list on my phone, like a tally of who everybody's favorite and least favorite character is.
Yeah. Well, in my my tracking on market social media and listening to podcasts and so on, I think the newsletter really is the way to get readers, because they're there just for you. And we were saying just before we started recording that social media is so saturated, to use your word, with everybody saying, please buy my book. And it's really about, and this is the whole point of these spotlights, is that it's bringing, I say it's meet new to you read authors, because it's for the authors, it's finding a new audience. And for the readers, because readers are prolific, they want new books. And I'm sure people have said to you, oh, I really loved when your first book was out and you were in the process of writing your second one. Oh, I really loved this. I read it over the weekend. When's the next one coming out?
Yeah.
And at least being self-published, once you've finished and you've got someone to edit it, and you've done the cover or got somebody to do the cover and so on, and done the blurb, it's then the process is quite short, I would imagine, from finishing it to then being able to get it up online. So do you have someone to do your covers?
My husband designs the covers for me. He's very visually creative. He decorates everything in our house and all of that sort of thing. So he likes to draw. So he designed, I actually have the first book right here.
I was going to ask you. Yes. Brilliant. I love that.
Oh, here you go. Thank you. It originally had a different cover that I also loved. And I never even knew if I would get to a second book. It's a hobby, right? So, but when I was getting close to finishing the second book, I said, okay, can you design the cover for the second one? And I was so blown away by it, but it didn't go with the original first cover. So I said,
it's going to look like a series.
Yeah. So I said, can you please redesign it? And he did. And this is what we've come up with. And everybody loves them. They always ask, who did your cover? And so I'm very lucky that my husband designed them. And he already has the third one. He printed them for me really big in the office, and they're in the back over my computer. I wish I was down there, but
right.
So he does that.
Does he do the Christmas tree as well? Does he? Because he said he's arty and he designs everything at home. Does he? Because some people are like that. They'll say, oh no, the tree is my husband. The tree is his domain. And the tinsel around it has to be, I mean, not ruler apart, but if one bit's a bit lower, he likes it to be just so.
That for me, the Christmas tree is that for he probably wouldn't even have a Christmas tree if it's left up to him. But I like having one, and me and the kids, we do it together. Yeah.
Great. So what is next for you? We've talked about covers, and so who does your editing? We bypass the editing briefly. Yeah.
I edit myself.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't sure how it was gonna go, but it went really well. I have a friend who is an English professor at a college here in the States, and she thought that I had a real editor. And I said, no, I did it myself. So if she said that, then I guess we're okay.
Okay, that's pretty good. I was going to
Um,
say you're in a teaching environment, and you know your English is obviously from that environment. Um, so and you've had people read it, and I'm sure had it not been, if somebody had spotted something, they would have said so. And that's the joy of self-publishing, is that if somebody picks something up, they could say, "Oh, yes, just go in and change it on the Word document and
yeah,
upload it again." And
I had that
yeah.
happen with the first one. A friend of
Mm.
mine got it on the Kindle, and then it was like on the first page. There was somehow
So,
I was so mad. It was on the very first page. If it's deeper
yeah.
in the book, sometimes people won't notice as much because they're kind of in the flow. So
Yeah.
she sent me a picture of it. So I did exactly what you said. I had to go back in, fix it, and then re-upload it. But I
Upload
was
it.
glad. Yeah, I mean, I was glad that I only had friends and family reading it at first, so that get that embarrassment out.
Mm.
Um, but I even went back a couple months later. I kind of just took the book out and reread the whole thing myself with all these months past and all the feedback from different people, and I even updated it a little bit from there. So the version that's out now is slightly different from the original, but
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Well, when I'm editing, I work for authors and publishers directly, so the process is slightly different. But with when an author sends me a book directly, I go through it a couple of times and I email it to my Kindle, and so I listen to it, so it reads it out. It's a robotic voice, but it reads it out, and that's really good for missing words. But I find that even though, so I go through it twice, send it back. The author then goes through it, sends it back to me. I go through it again twice and send it back, and then if they want me to go through it again, then I'll go through it again. They pay me for up to three revisions, three, full
Mhm.
sweeps, and then I'm always finding, and it's not errors as such the third time, but it's things. Oh yeah, actually we could just tweak this and just tweak that. And I'm sure, as you say, when you went through your book again, then
Mhm.
you're always going to, if you go through it again now, there'll always be things you just think, it's mostly stylistic, I'm sure, where you think, oh, well, I'll just improve that. And I listen to one of the podcasts I listen to is BBC World Service, World, I think it's connected to the World Service, but they have a book, World Book Group, and they invite authors whose first books were particularly did well, and they've had several books published since then. And some of them have said, "Oh, I went through the book again to remind myself about the characters. It's been so long since they'd gone through it, to remind myself." And occasionally, the subject, the question comes up as, "Would you make changes?" And invariably, they say yes, because it's you've gone on. Not only have you written more, but you've also life changes, and you have
Mhm.
a different way of looking at your old stuff. Um, so yeah, I don't think that would ever change. If you were half a dozen books in and went back to your first one, I'm sure you'd find things you'd change.
Definitely.
Yeah. So once book four is done,
Mhm.
and completes, in theory, completes the series, do you have any idea of what you'd like to do? Because I mean, you clearly, although you say it's a hobby, you clearly enjoy it and you love getting reader feedback from it.
I
I'd
do.
like to I'd like to think there would be something thereafter.
I hope so. I have another note on my phone with random ideas of possible books for the future. Some of them might be standalone books, some might turn into a series, because when I started this, I thought it was going to just be a standalone, and then it clearly could not be a standalone. It needed more.
Mm.
Um, it's just about finding the time to do it, and hopefully I don't forget the ideas, or but
Mm.
things come to me often, and I think that now that I am writing regularly, as opposed to graduating high school to now. It was very sporadic and I never really finished anything. It's more consistent now because it's the thing that I have for me, right? Anybody out there who's a parent knows it's hard to have that thing that is yours. And this is my thing, this and I read, but this is so rewarding and it's important to me and I do enjoy it. And my husband is very supportive, which helps, because if he wasn't, I don't know that I'd be able to really do it. So I have plans. I don't know, you had asked before about the genre, if I'll step outside the genre. I don't know. I don't know that I could write historical fiction as much as I love it, because it takes so much research and time that I don't have right now. The apocalypse, you just make whatever whatever you want. And
Exactly.
and even I also love dystopian literature and I have ideas for dystopian stories, but that world building is also a little bit more intensive than an apocalyptic story. So right now, while I'm getting my footing, I think I'll stick to the apocalypse because it I don't know, it can just flow a little bit more easily given the rest of my lifestyle right now, but I have ideas.
Well, one of my mentoring students, he when we first started, he had four ideas for four different novels. And there was one, it was clear from when he was going through it in the first session, when he was going through the different ideas, there was one that leapt out at me, and I didn't say it until the end. And he said, it was clear which he thought he wanted to go with. And so I said, gave him suggestions for all four, and I said, you write the one that really appeals to you, because then you have more passion for it. And when he said that although I hadn't specifically said this other idea was the one I favoured, clearly my reaction to it, and he said, I know which one you would go for, and everybody has told me to go for that. So he then decided, and I said, well, write a plan for just one page for each one, and then see which one grabs you. And he did actually go with the one that everybody else had said, which is a brilliant idea. So we're working on that now. So it may be that when you look at your notes on your phone, that one will leap out at you, and you think, well, go with that one.
I hope
I
so.
know, yeah. The thing, do you find because you have such short gaps to write that you would write more than that? If somebody said, okay, take the day off and have a whole day to write, do you think if you only have an hour, you write more because you've only got a short window?
That's a good question. I think if I had a day off, I would have to go to the library, because if I stayed home, then I would just be thinking about all the other things I have to do. So if I was at the library, I don't think I actually have the stamina to write all day. I think that I would get burnt out. It's a lot. It's very challenging on the brain. And I think after a couple of hours, I might not even be able to do more. So I actually think the hour spurt, or even the half-hour spurt, I get a lot done in that short time, because I feel like I have to. Maybe that's part of it. But
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's now or never.
Yeah,
And you said, yeah, you said earlier on that you're a tactile writer. Do you write by hand first, or are you a laptop or phone
the
writer?
first book I did, a lot of it I did by hand in a notebook, which I think helped me just to get back into the flow of things, because I hadn't written in so long. I started book 2 in a notebook over the summer because it was something I could just have with me wherever I was, and just jot down a little bit. But it's definitely faster typing, right? So I switched to writing out on my phone, because I didn't even have a laptop to write on at the time. So while my kids were napping and stuff, I would bang out a chapter on my phone. Which is not ideal, by the way. It's better than nothing, but it's hard to do. And then my husband said, why don't we just get you a laptop? And so, and I write at work. I started using Google Docs, so I don't need to have a flash drive. I can just open it up if I'm at work, or, on break at work, or if I'm at home, or even if we're visiting my mom and my mom's with the grandkids kind of thing, and I can do a little bit here and there.
Yeah. I've just noticed your earrings. They're not your book cover, are they?
Yeah, they are.
Are they? Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I
So see,
figured this.
when you're out and I said, what a wonderful marketing idea. When you're out and about, people go, "Oh, I love your earrings." Oh, yes, they're my book.
Yeah, it's
Brilliant.
great.
I love that.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Super. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you,
You as well.
and we'll speak again, hopefully in the fairly early in the new year, about book one, and have an audience.
I hope
And
so.
thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome.